Welcome to this JavaScript ES6 Plus Core Concept Study Guide, Part 2 of 4 from TestMole.com, where employers can test candidates and teams using pre-built or custom assessments. We also create free tests and guides like this. Please help us by liking this video. Subscribe for more study guides and free tests. And turn on notifications. Okay, let's begin. Which keyword is used to create a class as a child of another class? Inheritance is a fundamental concept in object-oriented programming (OOP) that allows a class to derive properties and methods from another class. This promotes code reusability by establishing a parent-child relationship where the child class, subclass, inherits the structure of the parent class, superclass. In JavaScript, this relationship is established using the extends keyword. Choose between A. Inherits, B. Extends, C. Super, D. Sub. The answer is B. The extends keyword is the standard syntax for creating a subclass. Other options like inherits, super, or sub are either reserved for different purposes, like super for calling parent methods, or are not valid keywords for class declaration. Inside a constructor of a derived class, what must be called before using this? When you create a subclass, the constructor of that subclass must ensure the parent class is properly initialized. In JavaScript, the super method calls the constructor of the parent class. This is a strict requirement. If you attempt to access this before calling super, the engine will throw a reference error because the subclass instance is not fully initialized until the parent constructor completes. Let's review the options. A. Parent, B. Super, C. This.init, D. Class.start. The answer is B. Super is the mandatory constructor call to initialize the parent class. Options like parent or class.start do not exist in the language, and this.init is just a custom method name that does not fulfill the requirement of calling the parent constructor. What is the primary function of the .filter method? The .filter method is a higher-order function used to process arrays. It iterates through each element of an array and executes a callback function, a test. If the callback returns true for an element, that element is included in a new array. If it returns false, the element is excluded. Crucially, .filter does not mutate the original array. It returns a shallow copy containing only the elements that pass the condition. Let's review the options. A. To change the values in an array. B. To create a new array with elements that pass a test. C. To delete an element from an array. D. To sort the array. The answer is B. The method creates a new array based on a conditional test. It does not modify the original array, unlike splice or sort, nor does it perform a transformation of values, that is the role of .map. If you declare a variable with let at the top level of a script, is it added to the global window object? In modern JavaScript, ES6 Plus, variables declared with let or const at the top level of a script are not attached to the global object, e.g., window in browsers. This was a deliberate design choice to avoid polluting the global namespace. In contrast, variables declared with var at the top level are added as properties to the global object. Let's review the options. A. Yes. B. No. The answer is B. Variables declared with let exist in a separate script scope and are not properties of the global object. Only var declarations at the top level are attached to the window object. How do you destructure the property city from const user equals address, city, London? Destructuring allows you to unpack values from objects into distinct variables. When dealing with nested objects, you must mirror the structure of the object in your destructuring pattern. To reach a property inside a nested object, You use a colon to map the property name to a new pattern, effectively drilling down until you reach the target property. Let's review the options. A. Const city equals user. B. Const address, city equals user. C. Const address city equals user. D. Const city equals user.address. The answer is B. The syntax const address, city equals user, correctly mirrors the nested structure. Option A fails because city is not a direct property of user, and option C is invalid syntax because you cannot use dot notation inside the destructuring pattern. Which of the following is not a state of a promise? In JavaScript, a promise acts as a placeholder for a value that may not be available yet. It exists in one of three mutually exclusive states. Pending, the initial state, the operation has not completed yet. Fulfilled, the operation completed successfully, and the promise now holds a resulting value. Rejected, the operation failed, and the promise holds a reason, usually an error, for the failure. Once a promise transitions from pending to either fulfilled or rejected, it is considered settled, and its state cannot change again. Possible answers are A. Pending, B. Fulfilled, C. Rejected, D. Waiting. The answer is D. Waiting is not a formal state in the promise lifecycle. Pending, fulfilled, and rejected are the three official states defined by the ES6 specification. Which method is called when a promise is successfully fulfilled? To interact with the result of a promise, you attach handlers using methods that allow for chaining. .then accepts a callback function that executes when the promise is fulfilled. .catch accepts a callback that executes if the promise is rejected. .finally executes regardless of the outcome, useful for cleanup tasks. These methods return a new promise, enabling a clean, sequential flow for asynchronous operations. Choose between A. Catch, B. Then, C. Finally, D. Success. The answer is B. Then is the standard method for handling successful resolution. Catch is for errors, finally is for cleanup, and success is not a native promise method. What does an async function always return? The async keyword transforms a standard function into an asynchronous one. Even if you return a simple value, like a string or number, inside an async function, JavaScript automatically wraps that return value in a resolved promise. This design ensures that async functions always behave consistently, allowing them to be awaited by other parts of your code. Choose between A. A string, B. A promise, C. A boolean, D. Nothing void. The answer is B. Async functions always return a promise, even if you return a non-promise value, which is then automatically wrapped in a resolved promise. Which of the following were introduced in ES6 ES 2015? Select all that apply. ES6 ECMAScript 2015 was a massive update to JavaScript that modernized the syntax and capabilities of the language. Key additions included arrow functions, a concise syntax for writing function expressions. Classes, syntactic sugar over JavaScript's existing prototype-based inheritance. Template literals, using backticks for easier string interpolation and multi-line strings. Let/const, block-scoped variable declarations. Destructuring, a shorthand for extracting values from arrays or objects. Possible answers are A. Arrow functions, B. Classes, C. JSON support, D. Template literals. The answer is A, B, and D. Arrow functions, classes, and template literals were all introduced in ES6. JSON support was added to the language long before ES6. What is the standard way to handle errors when using await? When using await to pause execution until a promise settles, the standard way to manage potential failures is the try-catch block. This mirrors synchronous error handling, making asynchronous code easier to read and maintain. If the awaited promise rejects, the execution jumps immediately to the catch block, where you can handle the error gracefully. Here are the options. A. Use .then .catch. B. Use a try-catch block. C. Use an if-else statement. D. Async functions cannot handle errors. The answer is B. A try-catch block is the idiomatic way to handle errors in async/await. While .then .catch works, it defeats the purpose of the cleaner async/await syntax. The .every method returns true if. The .every method is a Boolean returning array method that tests whether all elements in an array satisfy a provided callback function. It follows a short-circuit logic. As soon as it finds an element that returns false, it stops iterating and returns false immediately. If every element passes, it returns true. Scenario result. All elements pass true. One or more fail false. Empty array true, vacuously true. The options are A. At least one element passes the test. B. All elements in the array pass the test. C. The array is not empty. D. The array contains numbers only. The answer is B. It returns true only if the callback function returns a truthy value for every single element. It is often confused with .sum, which returns true if at least one element passes, or with general array validation checks that don't require total compliance. How do you combine two arrays ARR1 and ARR2 into a new array using ES6? The spread operator allows an iterable, like an array, to be expanded in places where 0 or more arguments or elements are expected. When used inside an array literal, it unpacks the elements of the source arrays into the new array. This is the standard ES6 approach for shallow copying or merging arrays without mutating the originals. The options are A. Const new ARR equals ARR1, ARR2. B. Const new ARR equals ARR1, ARR2. C. Const new ARR equals ARR1 plus ARR2. D. Const new ARR equals ARR1, ARR2. The answer is B. Using. Syntax correctly unpacks the contents of both arrays into a single new array. Using brackets without the dots creates a nested array of arrays, while the plus operator performs string concatenation, which is not how arrays are merged. What does object.entries return? The object.entries method transforms an object into an array of its own enumerable string-keyed property, key, value, pairs. This is particularly useful for iterating over objects using methods like .map or for of loops, as it converts the object into a structure that is easier to process functionally. Here are the options. A. An array of the object's keys. B. An array of the object's key value pairs. C. An array of the object's values. D. A string representation of the object. The answer is B. It returns an array of arrays, where each inner array contains the key and its corresponding value. Other methods like object.keys or object.values return only one half of that pair, not both. How are static methods in a class called? Static methods are defined using the static keyword inside a class. Unlike instance methods, which are called on an object created with new, static methods belong to the class constructor itself. They are typically used for utility functions or helper methods that do not need to access specific instance data, like this.name. Let's review the options. A. On an instance of the class. B. Directly on the class itself. C. Using the this keyword. D. Static methods don't exist in JS. The answer is B. Static methods are invoked on the class name, e.g., myClass.method, not on an instance. Attempting to call them on an instance will result in an error, as they are not attached to the prototype. What is the purpose of the accumulator in the .reduce method? The .reduce method executes a reducer function on each element of the array, resulting in a single output value. The accumulator acts as a memory bank that carries the result from the previous iteration to the next. Refer to the diagram on screen. It is the most powerful array method, capable of replacing map, filter, or complex loops by condensing an entire array into a single value, object, or new array. Here are the options. A. To skip certain elements. B. To store the running total or result of the reduction. C. To count the number of iterations. D. To sort the array. The answer is B. The accumulator persists the state throughout the iteration process, effectively building the final result step by step. It is not used for sorting, counting iterations, or skipping elements, as those tasks are handled by other methods or logic within the callback. Which method is used to create or retrieve a symbol from the global symbol registry? JavaScript symbols are unique, immutable primitive values often used as object property keys. While symbol creates a brand new, unique symbol every time it is called, the global symbol registry allows you to share symbols across different parts of an application or even across different realms, like frames. Symbol.for key searches the registry for a symbol with the given key. If found, it returns that symbol. If not, it creates a new one and adds it to the registry. Symbol.keyFor sim performs the reverse operation, retrieving the string key associated with a symbol from the global registry. Possible answers are A. Symbol, B. Symbol.for, C. Symbol.keyFor, D. Symbol.registry. The answer is B. Symbol.for is the specific method designed to interact with the global registry. Symbol creates a unique local symbol. Symbol.keyFor retrieves a key from a symbol, and symbol.registry does not exist. How do you rename an import to avoid name conflicts? When working with ES modules, you may encounter naming collisions if two modules export functions with the same name. The as keyword provides a clean syntax for aliasing imports, allowing you to rename them locally within the importing file. This syntax ensures your local scope remains clean and avoids conflicts without requiring changes to the original module's export structure. The options are A. Import func as new name from ./file.js. B. Import func, new name from ./file.js. C. Import func, rename new name from ./file.js. D. Import func new name from ./file.js. The answer is A. The as keyword is the standard ECMA script syntax for aliasing imports. The other options use incorrect operators like colons, arrows, or non-existent keywords like rename. Which operator was introduced in ES 2016 for exponentiation, raising to a power? Before ES 2016, developers relied on math.pow, base exponent to perform power calculations. The exponentiation operator was introduced to provide a more concise, readable, and mathematically intuitive syntax that behaves similarly to other arithmetic operators like plus or. Usage: base exponent. Example: 2, 3 evaluates to 8. It is right associative, meaning 232 is evaluated as 232, resulting in 512. Let's review the options. A caret, B, C pow, D exp. The answer is B. The operator is the official syntax for exponentiation in JavaScript. The caret operator is a bitwise XOR operator, not a power operator, and pow and exp are not operators. Which of the following built-in objects are iterable? Select all that apply. An iterable object is one that implements the add@iterator method, allowing it to be consumed by constructs like for, of loops, the spread operator, and destructuring assignments. Arrays, built-in iterables that yield their elements. Strings, iterable by code points, allowing you to iterate over characters. Sets, iterable in insertion order. Plain objects. By default, plain objects are not iterable because they lack the symbol.iterator method. You must use object.keys, object.values, or object.entries to iterate over their properties. Here are the options. A. Array, B. String, C. Set, D. Plain object. The answer is A, B, and C. Arrays, strings, and sets all have built-in iteration protocols. Plain objects are not iterable by default, which is why they are excluded. What is the primary use of the ES6 proxy object? A proxy object wraps a target object and allows you to define custom behavior for fundamental operations, such as property lookup, assignment, enumeration, and function invocation. This is achieved through traps methods that intercept these operations. Target, the original object being wrapped. Handler, an object containing the traps, e.g., get, set, has. Proxies are powerful tools for data validation, logging, performance monitoring, or creating reactive data binding systems. The options are: A. To speed up network requests. B. To intercept and redefine fundamental operations for an object. C. To create a deep copy of an object. D. To encrypt object properties. The answer is B. Proxies are designed specifically for interception and redefinition of object operations. They are not related to network speed, deep copying, or encryption. Which string method returns a new string containing the specified number of copies of the string on which it was called? The .repeat method is a built-in string prototype method that constructs and returns a new string containing the specified number of copies of the original string, concatenated together. Syntax: str-repeat count. Count must be a non-negative integer. If the count is 0, it returns an empty string. Behavior: it does not modify the original string, as strings in JavaScript are immutable. Here are the options. A. Copy, B. Duplicate, C. Repeat, D. Times. The answer is C. Repeat is the standard method for this operation. The other options .copy, .duplicate, .times are not built-in string methods in JavaScript. Which keyword is used inside a generator function to pause execution and return a value? Generator functions are a special type of function that can be exited and later re-entered, with their context, variable bindings, saved across reentrances. The yield keyword. This is the core mechanism of a generator. When the generator encounters yield, it pauses execution and returns the specified value to the caller. Resumption. The function stays paused until the .next method is called on the generator object, at which point it resumes execution from the exact line where it left off. Let's review the options. A. Stop. B. Pause. C. Yield. D. Return. The answer is C. The yield keyword is specifically designed to pause a generator function and emit a value. Return terminates the function entirely, while stop and pause are not valid keywords for this purpose. What is a closure in JavaScript? A closure is a fundamental concept where an inner function retains access to the variables of its outer, enclosing, lexical scope, even after that outer function has finished executing. This happens because JavaScript functions carry a hidden property, often called environment, that references the scope in which they were created. This allows for powerful patterns like data privacy and function factories. Possible answers are A. A function that is immediately executed. B. A function that has access to its outer function scope even after the outer function has finished executing. C. A method used to close a database connection. D. A way to hide variables from the global scope using var. The answer is B. Closures are defined by this persistent scope access. The other options describe unrelated concepts, fees, immediately executed functions, database operations, or general scope management. Which operator, introduced in ES 2020, returns the right-hand side operand only when the left-hand side is null or undefined? The nullish coalescing operator provides a way to handle default values specifically for null or undefined cases. Unlike the logical or operator, which treats all falsy values like 0, false, or as triggers for the default value, is more precise. It only falls back to the right-hand side if the left-hand side is strictly null or undefined. Let's review the options. A, B, C, D, and AND. The answer is B. The operator is the only one that targets nullish values specifically. Incorrectly triggers on falsy values like 0, while is for chaining and is for logical and operations. What is user profile name do if profile is undefined? Optional chaining is a safe way to access deeply nested object properties without having to explicitly check if each reference in the chain exists. If any part of the chain evaluates to null or undefined, the expression short-circuits and immediately returns undefined instead of throwing a type error, cannot read property of undefined. The options are A. Throws a reference error. B. Returns undefined without throwing an error. C. Returns null. D. Crashes the application. The answer is B. Optional chaining is designed to prevent crashes by returning undefined when a link in the chain is missing, rather than throwing an error. Thanks for watching. With TestMole.com, you get everything in one place, from easy candidate invites and role-based access, to deep analytics and built-in anti-cheat mechanics. We'll assess code answers, free text responses, and issue verified certificates. Ready to simplify your hiring? Give TestMole a try. And one more thing. If you like this video and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe.